Hi, Kayla. I wanted to leave you some feedback on your week one writing assignment. So first off, your formatting, your heading looks pretty good. Don't forget to include your header up here in the upper right-hand corner. So you also want to include your last name and your page number. Remember, there's a tutorial on how to format your submissions in MLA located in the resources folder if you need help with putting your header up here. So in terms of your summary, I think there are some good moments here, right? Um, I I think that you are bringing in some good moments, and I think that you have a fair critique um, in terms of you being able to write a thesis statement on this essay. Should you choose to write about it for essay one, so let me go ahead and give you some feedback on the summary first, and then let's talk about your critique of the essay next. So let me give you some guidance on how you can really make this work for a critical analysis. Okay, so first off, good work on including your signal phrase, right? You have the author and the title. This sentence right here is really unnecessary for a summary. So if you create a clear signal phrase, you don't need to include this line that I have highlighted here. George Orwell's essay, A Hanging is about a prison in Burma, right? So we already know that you were assigned to read it. You don't need to include those kinds of statements in your writing assignments. They just slow down your ideas, and they're really unnecessary for your main point. Um, I think that you're doing some good work with establishing setting here. Um, think about rephrasing here. A prison can't do capital punishment, but a prison can be designed to execute prisoners, right? There's a subtle difference there. And I think what happened is you just moved too quickly. Slow down a little bit here and fully capture the setting and the story. There's three things really I want to talk about you in terms of the summary. The ideas that you have are good. Okay? There's a couple things going on. First off, you're relying too heavily on the direct quotations, right? When you summarize, you are stating the author's main idea in your own words. So that means that you don't use direct quotations, okay? The times when you use direct quotations are when you are making a claim and you need to bring in evidence to support the claim, right? You don't do that when you summarize, right? But the points that you have are good. It's just, I want you to think about how can you get from this idea to this idea to this idea in your own words, and then, bring the paragraph to a close. So let me reiterate. The ideas that you have here are good, but you're relying too heavily on Orwell, okay? So get rid of all those direct quotations and really capture this in your own words. I'm going to tell you right now, I think you understand what's going on. I think you got it. It's just taking that extra step for you to get it down, right? And not let Orwell tell the story for you. One other thing. When you refer to the author, don't refer to him by his first name. So you always want to refer to the author by his or her last name. The very first time you introduce the author, state their full name, like you've done here. You've done it perfectly. But here on out, only refer to the author by their last name. Referring to them by their first name, it's just too informal. And then remember, when you're writing in professional context, like for the classroom, you have to maintain that formal tone. Okay, so Summary is almost there. Like I said, just work on putting this in your own words, and I do think that you can get there, because I can see with the ideas that are in your own words, you understand what's going on in the text. Okay. So now let's transition into how you've talked about what's going on in the essay. So you say, my opinion on a hanging by Orwell is that we should still have the death penalty. Okay, so that is perfectly acceptable for you to have as an opinion. But I want to caution you on what we are really doing with critical analysis. So with critical analysis, we are thinking about how well the author attempts to persuade an audience. So we're thinking about what the author does in the writing to convince the audience, right? So you're thinking about that here. You said he uses good details to make you feel like you're there, right? So what you've done is you said, excuse me, the details, the examples that the writer brings into the text makes the reader really connect concretely with the writing, right? What we're not doing is having an argument about whether or not we should have capital punishment, right? It's a difference. It's a slight difference. Critical analysis is concerned with what the writer does, whereas a discussion on capital punishment would look at whether or not it should be legal. Okay? But I think that you can work with this idea should you choose to write about Orwell. So really what you want to focus on then is, what audiences would this essay work for? Meaning, what audiences would be persuaded by the argument, and what audiences would not be persuaded by the argument? So I feel like what's kind of implied in what you're saying is there are certain crimes that that should allow for, the ultimate price, right? Which is the state is taking away somebody's life. And I think that you have a good insight when you say that Orwell leaving out the crime doesn't let us truly understand what he does. And that can be interpreted more than one way, right? It can be interpreted that, well, number one, the crime doesn't matter because murder is immoral, whether it's, a person killing another person or whether it's sanctioned by the state. We could interpret it as he left it out because the prisoner is innocent. Or we could interpret as, well, he is guilty and Orwell left it out because if he included it, we would not feel pity for the man. And I think all three of those are potentially fair readings of the text, right? And I think the last one, would probably work well with what you want to do. So, should you choose to write Orwell, don't let this slip into I don't like it because I believe in the death penalty, right? That is another kind of conversation that you don't want to have in this particular essay. What you want to think about is, what audiences would this essay work for? Meaning, what audiences would Orwell probably convince, and what audiences would he not convince, right? Because how you're going to support this essay is evidence from the text, right? So you bring up this point about TV shows, that's fine to kind of think about, but that's not going to justify whether or not the essay works, right? You have to look at what the essay it's doing, what the author is doing. So I hope you understand that difference. And if you want, we can talk about this further. So I hope that you view this before next week, so we can talk about it more. But I do think that you have a fair criticism here, right? And so instead of you thinking of it as in, I don't agree with capital punishment, therefore the essay doesn't work, think about it in terms of what audiences would it work for and what audiences would it not work for. And what I mean by audiences, think about it this way. Audiences that are in favor of capital punishment, audiences that are opposed to capital punishment, and then audiences that are somewhere in the middle. I I don't entirely know what you mean by this last sentence, and I'm really curious, honestly, to know what you mean by this. And I don't know. I think it's something that you and I would have to talk one on one about. So again, if you get this uh, in time before I see you in class, pull me aside and let me know, because I am flat out curious about what you mean by this, and maybe I can help talk out. I guess why we're reading it, why we're reading this essay in the 21st century. Um, so I think there's some good ideas here. What I really want to see you work on is this summary, right? You got a lot of potential here, and it's a lot of good potential. It's you not relying on these direct quotations and really trying to capture it in your own words. And I think that you can do that because I think that you understand what's going on. But let me know if you have questions, of course. All right. Thanks, Kayla.